In the early 1930s, Walt Disney released the Disney Watch, a timepiece featuring Mickey Mouse, a cartoon character. And within 2 years, 2.5 million of these watches were sold, many of them to adults. Adults who wanted to wear something with a cartoon character on it. And you could call these people an early incarnation of something that we know very well today, Disney adults. They buy products, they go to the amusement parks on a regular basis, and they're a huge part of the Disney empire, which as of mid-August was valued at roughly $210 billion. And AJ Wolfe knows all about them. She is a Disney adult. She's a media entrepreneur who founded Cambric Media, and she's also the author of the recently released book Disney Adults, which explains this whole phenomenon. AJ, thank you for coming onto the show.
Thanks. I'm really happy to be here.
In your book, you traced back this idea that Disney adults have perhaps been around since the company was founded around 100 years ago, but the term itself is fairly new, and some consider it to be a badge of honor, and others consider it an insult. And it's also kind of a little bit vague as to exactly what one is. So what would you say is a Disney adult, and how did they kind of come to be what they are today?
Yeah, this was the first thing I had to figure out, right, in order to do this book is how are we going to define this term that everybody thinks they know what a Disney adult is, but nobody really does. Talked to a lot of psychologists, talked to a lot of people who know fandom communities. Well, what we landed on was a Disney adult is someone who intentionally and willingly chooses Disney in their life. So if they have a choice to go someplace else for vacation, they will choose Disney World or Disneyland or a Disney park. They'll choose to go to the Disney movie. They'll choose to buy Disney products, stuff like that.
Yeah, and one of the main nets for sort of like grabbing in Disney adults or making Disney adults are the theme parks. And, your first experience you wrote was in the mid 80s, Disney World, sweltering heat. But yet you loved it.
I don't know how we loved it, but again, Disney has this. Well, anyway, I'll let you go.
Yeah. No, totally. And Disneyland, when it first opened, like a lot of people were kind of like, is this it? Like it didn't really have all that great of reviews, and they've still become this huge deal. What is it about the parks that like have pulled people in, and including yourself? I mean, you called it an addiction at some points in a, not necessarily in a negative way, but what is it about the parks, especially, that have like really reeled people in?
Such a good question, and one that I'm still trying to answer. I talked to a lot of Imagineers who are the engineers that work on Disney theme parks. They call them Imagineers from back in Walt's day, honestly. Even they don't really have the answer. The bottom line is that Disney doesn't settle for less than perfect. So they are very good at creating this immersive, overwhelmingly different space for you to enjoy, and that the focus of it is happiness, joyfulness. People are going to come in here and leave feeling like they've been someplace else, but they're positive about it. Nobody does it better than Disney, and there's a lot of psychology, there's a lot of science that goes into how they do it, but when it comes right down to it, they work really, really hard at making it the best it can possibly be, and that's why we're all so taken with it when we end up going.
And it seems like for a business, that is like the ultimate thing that you could ever want. Think of like other, successful businesses right now, like Amazon. It's not like people are like dying to go visit Amazon.com. And I don't think there are many people who have any love and passion for it and, feel immersed within it, like Disney does. It just seems like they hit the ultimate jackpot by like creating that type of experience.
Yeah. You will not find too many other companies whose consumers literally put their earnings call on their calendar so that they go listen to the earnings call to find out what's going on with their company. Disney fans do that, right? We want to know, how's the company doing financially? What new rides are we going to get? What's going to happen next? It is this incredibly passionate audience. Now, I will trace that back for most of us to something nostalgic, right? To something that we experienced with our family member or a friend or someone that means a lot to us. And that is a feeling that we want to continue to replicate throughout our lives, whether that's a safety, a happiness, a joyfulness. So that's another reason why I think a lot of Disney fans keep going back to Disney products, is to replicate that kind of joy, safety, happiness predictability that they had when they were kids.
Yeah, and it seems like the idea of the Disney adult has also really just grown a lot since the age of the internet. You know, people being able to kind of talk about it in community forums and on blogs and things like that. And at least at first, though, from what you kind of reported in your book, Disney wasn't like all that welcoming at first to the bloggers and some of these fan sites, but then they changed pretty quickly. Why do you think that is? And how did Disney start to realize, like, hey, it's actually a benefit to have a lot of really rabid adult fans?
I don't know that Disney would actually say that now, but what they had to realize, right, is that there are a ton of people on social media who now have a platform and a megaphone to say whatever they want. Back in the day, and I think still now, honestly, Disney likes to control their message, right? Disney likes to control what people are saying about them. They always have. That's why they're as successful as they are. And so when a bunch of us started to come in the mid 90s and talk about them online, and they didn't have control over what we were saying, I think the knee-jerk reaction was to sue people, shut this down, make sure nobody can say anything that we're not controlling. And once we got into the 2000s, and especially the 2010s, when we launched into Instagram and all these other social media platforms, Disney realized, okay, if you can't beat them, join them. So we have to figure out how to control this messaging by trying to control this group of creators and either giving them the correct information to talk about, which is when, finally they started sending press releases to everybody instead of, just to the mainstream media, but also to invite people to their parks, to their Imagineering buildings, to give the full story and to try to get that messaging across to the people that are being paid attention to when they talk about it. So it's very interesting. I loved following that whole trajectory because I was in the middle of it. I was a part of it, know? And so it's been really interesting to follow that and just to see how it's going to continue to evolve, because it will have to.
Here's what blows my mind. Most people are sitting around waiting for their boss to give them a raise, while millionaires are building income streams in their spare time. Entrepreneur and creator Marina Magilko cracked the code on this. She built more than 10 income streams that now pull in over $100,000 a month. She shared the secret sauce with our team, so now we're sharing it with you, exactly how she did it. This guide gives you practical step-by-step strategies you can actually implement. So just pick just one income stream from her guide and watch what happens. Stop what you're doing right now and grab it in the show notes 6 months from now, and you'll be glad you did.
When you got started writing about Disney, you, of course, had been a huge fan of Disney already for years at that point. But did you kind of get the sense that, like, it's like, hey, there's this huge group of people who are obsessed with this subject that I am also obsessed with? So were you just doing it for fun, or did you just see it as like, hey, this can also be a way for me to kind of like carve out a niche and kind of have my own business?
When I started doing the websites that I do, it was primarily because they didn't exist and I wanted them to exist. So I didn't necessarily have in my head that this was going to be a career or that this was going to be something I was going to do for the rest of my life. It was just, nobody's talking about this, and I wish someone would talk about this because I would read it if someone was.
Right.
So that's kind of how I got started doing it. But I did know that there was a huge group of people online. Even back in the mid-90s, there were message boards and bulletin boards where people were talking about Disney incessantly. And I myself, the majority of my time was spent just refreshing those message boards and learning more about Disney World. And so I think I knew that it needed to exist, and we were moving into that new era of online interaction and online communities. So I created those sites, and it just kind of grew from there. So I'm very, very happy that I was able to create something for this community that I am part of, but also something that they have given back, consistently throughout the last 15 years, helping me to find new information and talk about new things.
How do you think Disney World and Disneyland, are there specific ways that those two properties, or even some of other Disney's entertainment kind of properties, that they have changed and done things differently that you could say is specifically or at least mostly attributed to the Disney adults?
This is a tough one to nail down because, of course, Disney's not going to publish any of this information. They're never going to say we completely shifted our tack because of what the Disney adults were saying on Instagram or on Twitter. So this was me basically just looking at the experiences that I have had. I know that there are a couple situations where, maybe something was gone from a menu in Disney World and people rioted, and so it was brought back onto the menu. But I think there are a couple bigger instances where I do think that the Disney adult community, or at least the Disney online community, made a significant difference. One of those is the Galactic Star Cruiser, which was the Star Wars hotel that Disney opened.
Right.
When they announced that hotel and started giving some information about what it would be like, the cost, which was upwards of $6,000 for 2 nights, plus the kind of, I guess, the sneak peeks inside really frustrated the online Disney community because it seemed extremely expensive for what you were actually getting. And so it immediately had a negative stigma and connotation online. People were very upset about it. And I don't know that the Disney company was able to overcome that in the end. That hotel opened, and after a year it closed. So I just don't think they were able to really overcome what everyone was saying about that experience. So I think there are some other experiences like that where Disney adults, Disney cast members, employees, speaking online about their thoughts, their opinions, actually has affected the direction that Disney's decided to go. Like I said, they'll never admit that, but I absolutely think that's happening. They can't not pay attention to such a huge community.
Yeah. And one of the people I think you interviewed in the book, I mean, just kind of simple things perhaps that Disney has done is like, you can get good beer, at Disney parks now,
right.
Whereas they wouldn't have ever thought about that, 20 years ago. And so they are certainly like, even in small ways, are clearly catering more to adults. Yeah. You did a little informal study where I think over like a 3-day period, you and others kind of observed who was waiting to meet Disney characters, and around 25% were people without children, and maybe almost
on average. Some of the characters were almost 50% of the people waiting to meet them were adults without children.
Yeah, and so it's just that really surprised me, and I think really kind of put into perspective like how big of a deal Disney adults are. And one thing that you were talking about earlier is just the sense of nostalgia. And Disney adults, they've kind of wanted the parks to stay the same. A lot of them, at least, got pretty upset when Disney decided to change the theme of Splash Mountain, for instance. Mm-hmm. How do you think Disney is balancing catering to these Disney adults versus like, hey, they have to make a new generation of fans too who need to have their own experiences so then they can have their own nostalgia later on? Like, is there some tension there?
I think there is tension there. I think there's kind of always been tension there where if you fall in love with something, you want it to stay the way it is when you fall in love with it, and you never want it to change. But if something like a theme park does not change and does not innovate, then they're done. They're done for. I think Disney is very clear that their current stable of fans could get very, very frustrated with changes that they're making, but the data also points to we will eventually get over it and we will love whatever they're doing next. You know what I mean? Like, it's rare that a bunch of Disney fans hate something going in and then don't end up falling in love with it later. Unfortunately, the Galactic Star Cruiser was just too expensive to keep running until people fell in love with it. But I do think that there is a push-pull there. And there are some things that Disney just realizes, hey, all of the numbers and data are pointing to us needing to change this. But when it comes to things like them starting to think about or blue sky things that could come, I think that they are absolutely looking to the Disney adult audience and seeing what we're talking about that we'd be excited about, and what we might get really excited about if they were to announce something like that. And I think that's always kind of helping them with ideas as well. So it's a good data set for them to include as they're brainstorming. Fans are always going to be mad when you take away something that they love, but most of the time they'll get over it.
Yeah, and it seems like they've also been getting over at least enough of them high prices, because that's been an ongoing criticism for, basically since the pandemic. I looked at their kind of earnings reports, their most recent ones, and it's like, well, everything's still going up, even in spite of a lot of anger over these prices. It does kind of seem like as much as you have this really captivating, passionate group of fans, like Disney does have a lot of the power still to kind of make the final decision.
And what's interesting there too is you have to take into consideration yield, right? Like how many people are in your park versus how much money are they spending. And Disney's numbers are going up, not necessarily because they have more people in their park. They haven't actually reached their pre-pandemic capacity levels yet, but they have people spending more in the parks because of price increases and things like that. So you can make the argument that, hey, people will still pay it, but it's like, okay, but until what, at what level can you not get this smaller number of people coming to your park to pay those higher prices? So it's going to be very interesting to watch as we go along.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, AJ, thank you so much for coming in today. Again, this is AJ Wolfe. She's the author of Disney Adults, Exploring and Falling in Love with a Magical Subculture, and you can get that wherever books are sold. Thanks, AJ.
Thank you.
Okay, that's going to do it for us today, everybody. Thanks for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of HubSpot Media. Our editor is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We've got a ton more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go sign up at thehustle.co/email and follow us on Instagram at thehustledaily. We'll catch you later.